The very first step in this project to make the earbud holder is to find two coordinating fabrics. You're going to want to make sure that you have scraps large enough to cut two from the main fabric of this half circle, one from the main fabric of this circle, and one from the main fabric for this square. And then you also need your coordinating fabric to cut two from this and one from this. In addition to that, we're going to need a zipper, a lining for the inside of the pouch, and then you also need a ring that would go on your keychain. Next, you will lay your pattern pieces on your fabric, pin them in place, and then cut them out. Make sure you pay attention to which one is your main fabric and which one is your lining. Got all the pieces cut out, so what we have is the bottom full circle. This would be the main fabric, and then this would be the main fabric on the top, so two half circles. Over here you have the liner fabric, one main circle and two half circles. And then right here you've got one main circle and two half circles with the batting, a zipper, and then I decided to do a little pop of color, and that's just going to be the little tab that the ring for the keychain goes on. You're going to start with the liner fabric, and it'll be right side up. You'll take your zipper, which will also be right side up, and you'll line the top edge, and there's going to be a little bit overhanging on this side and on this side, which that's fine. We'll trim it up to the size we need later. Your next piece is going to be the main fabric, so that's what's going to show up on the outside. That will go right or wrong side up, so technically we have right sides together here. And then the next piece that you'll need is your liner, one of your liners for your half circle, and it's going to go right on top there. And you'll want to just carefully get them all lined up nice and neat. I went ahead and put a few pins in place after I laid out those pieces. I just want to show you real quick on the machine how I have the zipper foot on towards the inner part of the machine. So on the right hand side there is the extra bar, so I'm attached to the bar on the left. This is my zipper foot, and I have turned my stitch to stitch 2, so that just moves my needle over slightly from where it was. So here was stitch 1, still a straight stitch, but if stitch 2, it just changes the position of the needle to a more central position. We're trying to achieve a 1/4 of an inch seam, so right here, let's see if my thumb can, right there, right on the edge of that feed dog, on the throat plate, that's what you're going to line the edge of your fabric with, and that would result in a 1/4 of an inch seam. So see how that batting is just lined up with that rectangular edge just outside of the feed dogs. That's where you want to line up for a 1/4 of an inch seam. Alright, so I'm all lined up. I'm going to go ahead and lower my needle into the fabric, lower my presser foot. I'm going to make sure I don't run over these needles here, or those pins, sorry. I'm going to stitch a few stitches forward and reverse. Just going to pull these pins out as I come to them. You really don't even need pins if you're being careful about holding it all in place. Okay, so I'm almost done to the other end, and then I will reverse and then back to the end. Okay. All right, we just finished up sewing the first part of the zipper, so there's a 1/4 of an inch seam right here. What we'll do now is we'll flip this over, and we're gonna do the exact same thing again. So I'm gonna take my half circle liner, I'm gonna line it up with the top edge of the zipper with the zipper face up. For this part though, I wanna make sure it's nice and even. I'm gonna go ahead and flip this way just for a second so that it's straight and even with the other circle that I've already sewn. I don't want it to be over here or over here. I need it to line up even with that circle. I'm gonna flip it back over now. So I've got my first piece in place. Then next we take our outer piece, the main fabric. It's gonna go face down, so wrong side up, and then my batting piece is gonna go on top of that. So now we have the same thing we started with. I'm going to pin it in place, and then we'll do a 1/4 inch seam this time along this side. So this is the second half of the back side of the top side of the pouch. It's got the half circles. Again, I'm lining up with just outside of the feed dogs, and I've got a zipper foot on, same position I had it previously. I'm going to lower my needle, lower my presser foot, stitch forward a couple stitches, and then reverse. Just a back stitch, and then I'm going to be careful not to run over my pins. I'll take those out as I go. And again, we are looking for a 1/4 inch seam all the way down, and I am still at a stitch selection of 2, so that's the center position of my needle. And then I've got a 2.5 stitch length, so just standard stitch. And when I get down to this end, I'm gonna hit reverse. That's it. All right, we've just taken this out of the sewing machine and stitched the other half on. Now you're going to open it all the way up to press it. So let's see here. I need to open it up back there too. There we have it. I love it so far. I love my fabric choice and my zipper color. So hopefully when you make your choice, you're going to pick something you really like too. And we're just going to press it so that it lays flat. You don't want to leave your iron on the zipper for too long, because if it's a plastic zipper, you could melt it. Okay. All right, I've gone ahead and replaced the zipper foot with the regular J foot. And what you need to be looking for is the opening in the presser foot right here. So we're going to line the edge of the fabric up. See the gray part, how it's just at that opening? That is where we're going to want to stitch. We're just going to be doing a top stitch along both of the sides over here and over on the other side. So just to show you now that this is the regular presser foot, not the zipper foot, and to line up with the opening in the foot, I've also moved it back to a 1 stitch and a 3.5 stitch length. So I'm going to get my thread underneath here. Again, I've got my opening lined up with the edge of my gray fabric, and I've got an increased stitch length. So now I'm at a 3. We're just going to top stitch along this side. So we're done here. Let me clip loose, and then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So again, my needle's going down with the opening in my presser foot lined up along this gray crease here. All right, so now our top stitching is all done. If it was hard to see on that other video where that went in, it's supposed to be 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And I'm going to set that aside for now, and we're going to make the tab that the keychain ring is going to go through. So you should have a 2-inch square. First, you're going to start by just folding it in half, and then you'll press it. Don't burn your fingers because it's a pretty small space. And then you'll take that and you'll open it back up, and you'll fold both of the ends into the crease. So you had just made a crease with the iron. Now you're going to fold the 2 ends into the crease and press again. And then you will fold in half. If you remember back to creative sewing where you made a stuff sack, there was a loop that held a drawstring. Same exact process for making this loop. So then all we're going to do now is we're going to go in and top stitch along both of the long edges. Alright, I just put the top stitch in here, and it's just basically a straight stitch that goes about 1/8 of an inch or less away from the edge. And again, you're going to do that on both of the long sides of your, what will be your loop holding your keyring. Alright, so earlier I said that it didn't matter that our zipper was too big because we're going to be able to make it exactly the size we need. So, but what we have to do is we have to unzip the zipper slightly, so it needs to go past the top edge of the circular edge, and then we're going to tack the end of the zipper so it's open. I'm going to take a needle and thread, and I've already got a knot tied at the very end of it there, and so I'm going to go on the back side of the needle right even with the circle, and then I'm going to go across to the other side, and I'll pull through, and I want to tighten that up, okay, and then I'm going to just do a stitch over here again on this side. So I'm going to sew from right to left. And you need to do it several times. So far I've got 3 stitches. And I just pull it tight each time, in case that's hard for you to see. So I'm coming up from the back on the right side of my zipper, pull through, down on the left, whoopsie, pull through, and then repeat, right to left. And this is called tacking the zipper. So if you see in some instructions that are written, it doesn't explain how to do this in the directions on the tutorial. It just says tack the zipper. So this is so you know how to do that, because it's not explained there for you, it's just assumed that you already know how to do it. Alright, so once the zipper is tacked, so it's all sewn right there, then you're just going to flip this over, and you're going to take your needle underneath some of those existing stitches that you just made, pull your needle through, and then there's going to be that little loop at the end. You'll put your needle through the loop, and then you're going to pull it tight to make a knot, and you'll do that at least twice, so that will be a double knot. And that is all we need to do to tack off the zipper. Alright, you want to make sure you're still on the top half of your zipper pouch. So it's the side that has the, well, I guess the only side we've done so far. It's the side that has the 2 halves. So we've got our zipper laying on the top. That's important too. You wouldn't want to accidentally pin this loop in here because this is the inside of the pouch. So we're going to flip this over, zipper side up, and we're going to take the open end of the loop and line it up just where we had previously tacked the zipper, and then you'll fold the loop back down to that end. So I've got a fold right here and 2 open edges right there. I'm going to pin that in place, and then we will be sewing it on in just a second. It's kind of hard to, I'm going through too many layers. There we go. Alright, so that's pinned in place right where we need it, and we'll go sew it on. Alright, so now we're going to sew that loop on. You're just going to take it underneath the presser foot. You're supposed to be sewing even with the spot that you just tacked. So I'm going to drop my needle right there. Actually need to push that pin out a little bit more. Once your needle's down in there, that's held in place. I'm going to take the pin out. And then you just sew straight across. Alright, so next thing you're going to do is you're going to take this is the liner fabric, and you're going to take it with the right side out. So the wrong side will be facing up. Then you're going to take your circle batting piece, lay it right on top of the liner piece, and then next you're going to take the main fabric, and it is going to go right side up on top of that. So it makes like a little sandwich with the batting inside. And the next thing that you will do is you'll take your piece that you've already constructed and you're gonna lay this whole set right on top of it. One thing you have to make sure is that your zipper is in the middle here. Should be from earlier, but if you've moved it for some reason, make sure it's in the middle. And then we are going to lay this right on top, just like that. So I'm on a stitch 1, but I've increased the stitch length to a stitch 4. This is a basting stitch, which normally is temporary and would come out, but this one's gonna stay in. And it's gonna be just really to hold the fabrics all together before we sew them in place. So we're gonna use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm gonna be looking at this there's a little groove in the middle of this presser foot that I'm gonna use as my guide. So I'm gonna line my needle up where it is, the edge of the fabric is positioned even with that little groove in the presser foot. Now this is the first time I've made this project. As I'm making this video, it's the first time I've done it. And I was just reading over the tutorial, and the person who designed this, who created this tutorial, suggested that you, at the end of it, she says, to use interfacing on the backs of your fabric so they don't stretch. So if as you're sewing along, you get some bumps or lumps, like let's say I had a bubble and it wasn't smooth, I would just make sure my needle's down, I'd lift the presser foot and kind of pivot it around a little bit to get that bubble out of there. Because this fabric could potentially stretch. So far I'm not having any troubles with that. So I'm just, again, I'm keeping it the edge of the fabric lined up with the groove in the presser foot. And there we go. I'm sewing, I had just had it up to a 3 and I turned it down a little bit, but you all will want to probably sew this with a speed of around 2 or so, just so you don't get going too fast. And I always try when I'm making videos to keep my hands out of the way as much as possible, but it's kind of hard. So hopefully you can see where the stitch is going in. And the one place that is going to give me trouble is right here where we're ending. I am going to have a little tiny bubble, it looks like. It's gonna... Yep, I'm going to have one little spot there. It has a little tiny wrinkle, which it's okay. I'd rather have a little tiny wrinkle right there rather than a larger one when I actually sew it. So that's my base stitch. If you can see that, there's just a little, it's 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Of course, this is zoomed in, so it looks a little bit wider. But it's 1/8 of an inch from the edge all the way around. And that was a stitch length of 4. All right, I'm back to a 2.5 stitch length, so standard stitch length. Now I'm going to start same spot I did last time, only this time I'm doing a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Let me see here, I'm just gonna test. Nope, that's a 1/4. Okay, so I'm gonna be on a stitch 1, 2.5 stitch length, and I'm gonna look at the edge of my presser foot as a guide for where I need to stitch. So remember your techniques for sewing on curves. If it feels like it's getting out of control for you, or it's not curving like you want it to, you could slow down. You could decrease your stitch length. You could leave your needle down and lift your presser foot up to adjust if you need to in that way. But if you just slowly guide it in a circular pattern, you should do okay. And it looks like we are very close to where we started. So we're just going to come back to meet up with that beginning point, and I'll put a couple back stitches in to finish it off. All right, so we're getting ready to flip this inside out, but before we do, we need to decrease the bulkiness of the seam. So you all are at school and have access to pinking shears. That's going to be the shears that have a little zigzag edge. I'll have them available. I've got 3 or 4 pairs. I'm at home and don't have that luxury. So I'm just going to be trimming off some of the excess fabric. You're actually going to be cutting the zipper off the edge, the part that you don't need. Okay, so I'm going to be just trimming a little bit of extra off. I'm using just regular shears, not my, or scissors. I'm not using my sewing shears because I don't want to dull the blade when I cut the zipper off. But then what I'm going to do, because I do not have pinking shears here, is I'm just going to do next is we have to open up the zipper. And this might be tricky, you just have to play with it a little bit. Maybe get the opening. Okay, and then you turn it inside out. Oh, you know what I did? I messed up somewhere, guys. It's still cute. I still really like it. In fact, this may have been one of those accidents that ends up working out in my favor, because what was supposed to happen is the inside, this was supposed to be this fabric. So somewhere when I attached those circles, I flipped them on the wrong end. So I love it like this though. Anyway, it's pretty much finished. I have to do one more stitch. I'm going to top stitch all the way around it, smooth it out, and then we'll add our key ring here. Probably if I were making this tutorial myself, I would have put the key ring on before I sewed it in place. But we'll go with it, just like this. Pretty cute. Very last step here before adding the key ring is just to top stitch around. So I'm going to again be looking at the groove on the center of the presser foot. And let's see here. Let's start out right here. Oh, I don't want to. So I'm just guiding it in a curved fashion to get it going in a circle, and trying to keep the edge of the fabric lined up with the groove in the center of the presser foot. And I've got my stitch length on a 3. That could be one thing that you adjust if you're having trouble sewing this top stitch. Again, a top stitch is a finishing stitch, so it should be 1/8 of an inch or less away from the edge. It's just intended to make it look nicer, neater, and more finished. So if you're struggling with that at a stitch length of 3, then what you do is you would just decrease your stitch length, and it'll give you a little bit more control. The other thing is really just to keep it slow. You don't want to have worked so hard to make something really nice and then just zip through it really fast and do a sloppy job, because this is the last thing that you'll be doing. Okay. See, my iron, I'm at home, my iron something's not right with it, so it had way too much steam and water in it when I was ironing. So my fabric is actually wet right now and it's sticking to the throat plate. Alright, so I'm almost back to where I first started sewing. And we're just going to match up those two. There we go. Right back where I started. And that is it. Besides adding the keychain ring, which I do not have right now, this is finished. It's all done.